Hello, I'm Brian Beck, and this is Brian Codes. I'm trying to learn C++ while in parallel trying to accomplish my Python mastery in Leetcode. So I did learn Python for a few years on and off, and I'm trying to get deeper into C++. I'm going to try to do them at the same time in parallel, not at the same time, but at least in parallel, one after the other. And we're going to start with Leetcode, the top 75 interview questions. Problem 1071, the greatest common divisor of strings. So I know the GCD as the equal amount that we can divide two numbers until there is no remainder. So if we have, I'm going to use a metaphor, two jars of cookies, one has 12 and one has 8. I know that I can take 4 cookies out of each jar equally, and both of them will eventually reach 0 with no remainder. And so since we can pull out 4 cookies out of each jar, the greatest common divisor will be 4. We can also see that because we'll pull out 4 cookies from jar B, which has 8 cookies, and then we'll pull out 4 cookies from jar A, which has 12 cookies, and jar A will be the last amount of cookies. So, and that last amount will be 4 after we pull out 8 from jar B. Yes, I just said it in the most confusing way possible, but let's just get going anyways. So I'm going to start with Python because I'm most familiar with Python, and I'm actually trying to learn C++ more. So here are some of the examples written here, and I already kind of looked it over. I kind of know what's going on in my head already. I have the inputs. I'm just going to go straight to VS Code, and from there we will do a little bit more focus, a little bit more writing and typing everything out. So let me try to open VS Code, which is not opening for me, and it just opened a new one for whatever reason. Hey, where'd you go? Here it is. Oh my God. All right, let's start making some comments because I really want to kind of understand everything visually. So I'm going to call this the cookie jar because I need metaphors. I need to see things visually. And I want to find the largest common divisor that can be easily divided between 2 cookie jars. All right, let's see what else. So let's just use some of these examples that the Leetcode gave us. So for string 1, which is basically anything that's inside of quotes that describes what we're trying to measure or what we're trying to name or label. So our string 1, which is, I'm going to call cookie jar 1. So string 1 equals cookie jar 1. And then that's going to be confusing, so I'll just delete that. Cookie jar 1 equals ABC, ABC, ABC. And then string 2, or cookie jar 2, will equal, and then we have to put it in quotes because it's a string, ABC. So cookie jar 2 only has 3 cookies, but cookie jar 1 has 9 cookies. If we pull out each cookie, 3 cookies at a time, we'll only be able to pull out of cookie jar 2 once, but we'll be able to pull out of cookie jar 1 3 times. And we're looking for the same patterns. So ABC is the pattern here. So we got to make sure we're following that exact same pattern. It has to be pulled out by A, B, and C. So we can't just pull out B and C because then there will be a remainder of A. There can be no remainders or the code won't work. Just for my OCD, I'll put that as one hashtag. And then the next example that they gave us is a little bit different one. So cookie jar 1. And I realize that these are a little bit longer than string 1, but whatever. And then we got our 2 ABA, ABB, AB, AB, AB. And then we got cookie jar 2, which again equals just AB. Let's put two ABs. So the only pattern here is AB, because we would have to pull out AB 3 times from cookie jar 1 and AB 2 times from cookie jar 2. If we took out AB from cookie jar 1, then cookie jar 2 would be 0, which is what we want. But then cookie jar 1 would have a remainder, which is something that we don't want. So we want to try to do that. Again, let's show another example that they gave us here. It is cookie jar 1, and this equals cookie. And then we got cookie jar 2, and this equals just jar. None of these match. You couldn't take jar, J-A-R, out of the letters cookie because those letters in that order doesn't exist. Therefore, it would equal, let's just put it the real way, it would equal 0. It would equal nothing. Whereas this would equal AB, and this would equal ABC. Bing bong. Okay, I like to make sound effects. So this is kind of the rules that we're going by right now. And so from here, we're going to go ahead and try to make our code. I find Python a lot easier, but at the same time, I know that C++ is faster, even though it might be somewhat longer. The first thing that I realize is from Python, it's a toolkit, and we have to import a lot of different kind of modules so that we can do some fun little functions and we can do fun calculations and all that stuff. If you're in data analysis, we import our pandas. But right now, if we're in Python and we're just doing basic math, we import our math module. So I'm going to just click import math. Boom. It's imported after it starts loading. And the math is going to let us find that common denominator without us having to calculate jar A, find the remainder of jar B, all that other fun stuff, which we have to do in C++. So, okay, we imported math already. I'll just put it up close now, give it a space. Now, they already gave us a format in C++, in Leetcode. We have to follow this solution here. So we have to take this format. I just control copied it, and now I'm going to put that into our current VS Code, and then so that's how we're going to start it. Class is like a toolbox, and our different functions are the different tools. Right now we're only focused on one tool, i.e. our cookie jars. And our cookie jars, we have two jars, cookie jar 1 and cookie jar 2. So what I'm going to do here is we have to keep this name so that Leetcode would know what we're doing, what we're going on. We have to put self, because if we had multiple tools in our toolbox or multiple functions, we have to have a way to call back to each of our tools. So this self is a way to call back to this particular cookie jar tool. And so we're going to do, we're not going to do string 1. Again, strings are anything that are in quotes that we can label or quantify or something like that. Instead, we're going to call it cookie jar. Cookie jar 1. And then that will be a string that gets inputted some type of number, some type of value, some type of integer. And this would be cookie jar 2. Cookie jar 2. And then, so cookie jar 1 has, for example, 12 cookies in this string, and cookie jar 2 has, for example, 8 cookies in this string. And it will output the string for us, or it'll output our result for us. So we'll leave that colon there, and then we'll go to the next one, because we just defined our function, GCD of strings. They already gave us that as a default. Otherwise, I would put it as cookie jar cookies. Okay, so we have to, let me just go ahead and make some comments here so that we just have a good understanding of what each line does. So we'll use our hashtag and we'll put this is the amount of cookies in the cookie jar. Cookie jar. And the pattern, or I should say amount of cookies we take out. Okay, that's that. Now let's go to the next one. Of course, we have to do a nice little indent because we're trying to build inside of this function. So now that we kind of gave the instructions or what this function is, we're going to start doing two kind of if statements. The first statement will be, what if cookie jar 1 and cookie jar 2 had remainders? Or what if cookie jar 1 was different than cookie jar 2 in some way in regards to the amount of cookies we can pull out? So we're going to have that come out to 0. And then another one will be, what if the cookie jars have no remainder and it's 0 at the end? Then we'll have the solution. So let's do the first one where we have a remainder and it's kind of like an error and it doesn't work, so it's like 0. For both jar 1 and both jar B, we have to be pulling out the same amount of cookies. So they have to equal each time. So it has to be 4 cookies from this and 4 cookies from this. But if we ended up pulling out 3 cookies from jar A and 4 cookies from jar B, the first one, and then the second time we put 4 cookies each, then it wouldn't be equal. So we got to make sure these are equal. And if it's not equal, we have to cancel it out. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and use if we take out the cookie from jar 1 plus what we take out from jar 2 is, like, for example, 4. We have to make sure that this first jar 1 and jar 2 is 4 cookies each, and then the next one is also 4 cookies each. But if it's not equal, so that exclamation equal is not, then we're going to get some type of an error. So we're going to go opposite this one because we have to see if it's actually going to work or not. Let's put our colon. So if we take out 4 cookies from each jar and then we take it out in different orders, are they still going to be equal? Because if they're not, then we're going to get a error. We're going to return nothing. But let me go ahead and put this in there. Let's make sure that we are taking out the same amount of cookies, or else boom, 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 or else nothing. So after that, we're going to start doing the actual calculations of the remainder of the greatest common divisor between how many cookies we take out from cookie jar 1 and how many cookies we take out from cookie jar 2. So we'll make sure we indent properly. Calc the GCD of cookie jar 1 and 2. Oh, let's just say with no remainders, because that's a GCD. So we start by giving it a basic variable name. I'm just going to say GCD length. I can't spell. And then that's our variable name. So after variable name, we'll have our equals. And then now, since we're doing the import math, actually I already have that right there. Now that we're doing import math, we do import and then some kind of an easy, say GCD. And then now we're talking about how many cookies from cookie jar 1 and how many cookies from cookie jar 2. So we're going to have to say length in this scenario, or len in this scenario. So it starts with len, and then we put our cookie jar 1 inside here, comma, and then we go again let's keep that parentheses, comma after the parentheses, and then len, and then cookie jar 2. So now we're going to look at the greatest common denominator of both these cookie jars given the number that's inputted right here. So now we're going to go ahead and finalize everything. And after it runs this calculation here, we're going to have to ask for a result. Give me the GCD or the pattern for each of the cookie jars that are being pulled out. So if we have 12 and we have 8, the GCD will be 4 because the remainder of cookie jar 1 should be 4. So all we're going to do is say return cookie jar 1 because it has the largest amount of cookies, and that will be the last one counted. And then we're going to say if you can be, we're going to reference this one right here, and then we're going to say if you can be taken out repeatedly from cookie jar 1 and 2, how many cookies will be left in cookie jar 1? So we'll do our bing, and then we'll do a colon, and then we'll reference this one right here, which is GCD length. And that should be pretty much it. I'll just double check everything. This is our cookie jar for Python. I'll copy this code. If I can copy it, Control C. I'll move back to our VS Studio code, or sorry, our Leetcode. I'll Control V, and we'll go ahead and test it out. Run it. We got an error. What kind of error do we got? Solution.py GCD length underscore ABC. What is this? Get me out of here. Code. Oh my god. I spelled return wrong. Alright, let's try that again. Run it. Funny. Okay, so that works. If they input leet into cookie jar 1 and they input code into cookie jar 2, it comes out nothing. But if they input these, we come out with our AB. That's the expected one is what is left in cookie jar 1, and this is what's left in cookie jar 1 for this other case. So that one is completed. That one's good to go. I submitted it already, but I'll submit it again. And then we'll get our solved. So now we're going to go to C++ in our VS Studio code. And then I already copied the format that they wanted us to use as well as the comments. And the comments, of course, are forward slashes instead of hashtags. Now C++ is interesting because it has some similarities to Python. We're still going to use class solution. Class, of course, is the toolbox that we're going to use, and each function is like the tools. And so, of course, we got, instead of define our function with def and then the GCD part, we're using string, which is the type of function. Later on, we'll use integer function, which is the whole numbers. But in this case, we're just using strings, which are the names. And if you also notice, it has string and string1. And actually, we're going to change that because we used cookie jar. And we're going to keep that same consistency. And before, we would put cookie jar first, whereas this time we're putting it opposite. We're putting it second after the first string. So cookie jar 1. And then here we'll do cookie jar. Let me go ahead and scoot this over. And this would be cookie jar 2. Cookie jar 2. And the funny thing about C++, well, it's not funny, but it's very effective, is that we won't be importing any modules. Like last time we imported the math module, and it just helped us find that greatest common divisor. Here we have to actually identify that, hey, cookie jar B, I want to know the remainder of cookie jar B after we apply that to A. So we're going to do like B equals A percentage B to get the remainder and then calculate everything from there. So it's a little bit more in depth. We have to use these brackets because this is where the code is going to exist for the next part. So we got our initial part done, and now we're going to do kind of the same thing that we did in the initial Python one. We're going to put jar 1 and jar 2 in order, and it has to equal the opposite. So it has to equal jar 2 and jar 1. And if they're equal, it can go on to the next step. But if it's not equal, it creates an error. So we're going to put basically the same thing. Cookie jar 1 plus cookie jar 2. And if you're not in order, you're going to stop. But if you are in order, you'll keep going. But right now, we got to put that stop part first. So cookie jar 2, because we're seeing, hey, if they're both in different orders, do they still have the same number? If not, stop. Plus cookie jar 1. And then we're going to go ahead and return this bad boy, indent. And then we get this is our nothing output. And then we end it with our semicolon, kind of like how we do with SQL. So that part is ended. If our cookie jars don't match, oh God, I forgot the underscore right here. If our cookie jars don't match, then stop, error. But if they do match, we do this next part. Let's make a comment. See if the cookies match. I just thought it was Python. See if the same amount of cookies are being pulled out and match. Okay. All right. So now we're going to do that same calculation that we did before in regards to inputting the number of cookies we're going to pull out. Last time we did len parentheses cookie jar 1. But this time we're going to do the opposite again, and we're going to do cookie jar 1 dot length. So how many cookies will we pull out of each jar? Has to be a common pattern. So 4 each, 3 each, etc. And then now we're going to define our new function. So our first function was a string. This next function, we're going to use numbers because we're using the number of cookies we're pulling out. So it has to start with int, which is a whole number. And then we're going to just say something easy, GCD length, like we did last time. So as you can see, the structure is basically the same. And then again, last time we did math.gcd. This time we're just going to do GCD. And then last time we did len parentheses cookie jar 1. But this time we're just doing cookie jar 1 dot length. And then we'll leave it open for the inputted number. And I just messed up, so I'll fix that. And then we'll do a comma, and then we'll do it again. Cookie jar 2, and then dot length. And then open it up for some input. And then we have to close it out with a semicolon. Let me just double check everything. Boom. Okay, so the next one is just returning the cookies, but this time we have to tell it to start from 0, and then from 0, using cookie jar 1, count how many is going to be eventually left based on this calculation. So it's taking out of cookie jar 1 and this length, so it's going to take out 4 from jar 1, it's going to take out 4 from jar 2, and we kind of want to see what's left. So we have to use this thing called substring. Here we're using this dot length. The next one we're going to use dot substring, which is going to just say, what's left, guys? So we'll do how many cookies. Oh God, I keep thinking this is Python. How many cookies are left after 0 from jar 2. How many cookies are left in jar 1 after 0 from jar 2? Because cookie jar 1 has the most cookies, so we keep it on the same line. We return just as we did in Python, and then we're going to say cookie jar 1 because it has the most cookies, and then we're going to use our substring, and then we're going to do that 0 because we start from 0, and then we're going to reference this function right here, 0, comma, GCD length. That's it. And then we end it with a semicolon like SQL. And that is our first one, our public function. But we also have a private function. You can imagine this as you're in a restaurant and you have a menu that says, hey, this cookie is made of sugar, flour, and blah, blah, blah. But then the chef has a different menu that has the exact measurements. And nobody else can use those exact measurements anywhere else. So we have to do another place that calculates the remainder of our cookies in a more private location. So wait, let me go back here. Please delete. So we're going to say private. I can't spell. And this private can't be used in any other function. It's only for this specific function and this specific class solution. So now we're going to have to look a little bit deep on how to get the remainder. And I had to look this up. So this is what I talked about, that B, the cookie jar B equals cookie jar A, the remainder B. So we're going to see what's remaining in cookie jar 1 after B is gone. So again, we're going to create a new variable called GCD. And since we're using numbers, whole numbers, not decimals, because we don't want any remainder, we're going to call it int. Oops, let me go ahead and indent it. GCD, greatest common denominator. And then basically how many cookies, the largest number of cookies that we can take from each jar, and both of the jars have to be emptied with no cookies left over. So this many cookies are left in jar A, this many cookies are left in jar B, and then we start getting into the nitty-gritty of this, and then we're going to create a loop. So it's going to start counting. Okay, jar B, we're going to take out 4. Jar A, we're going to take out 4. Jar B, we're going to take out another 4, but now it's empty. Jar A, we're going to take out another 4, but there's 4 left. That's what we want. So we want something that says, while jar B still has cookies, keep counting. And keep counting until jar B has 0. So while jar B, parentheses, B does not equal 0, keep going. And let me just go ahead and make some comments here. I don't want to forget anything. How many cookies can we take from each jar until empty? Count until jar B is empty. And then we continue that code inside here, but we're going to go a little bit deeper because we have those brackets. And then we're going to start our actual calculation. So we're going to set up a temporary integer, a temporary variable that's going to count B. So we're going to do int because it's a whole number with no remainder. And this is our temporary variable, which is our jar B. Now this B is going to just constantly be counted until it becomes 0. Enter. And then it has to find the remainder. So it's B equals A, and this is the remainder part that I had to learn, percentage. The remainder after taking the remainder of A after taking everything out of B, and then after that's done, we get our results from A. So it tells us our results. So we make our comments here. Oh God. Hey, Okay, how many cookies are in jar B? And then this one is, what's the size? Oh my God. Please stop. Front. W. What's the size of jar A if no cookies in jar B? So the remainder is this percentage. Then we do one more and we say, okay, what's that number in jar A, jar 1? And that cookie will be the GCD. Sorry, that number will be the GCD, which if it was 12 or 16, it would be 8. Or sorry, 4. And then we'll finalize everything by returning. We don't want to return in here. We want to return from this integer one. So we'll leave this one. And then we'll go to return, which show me. It's like show me A. Because we already created this temporary variable here, A. Now show it to me. Close it off with our beautiful semicolon. And we have another semicolon here. Just make sure everything's good to go. Is this private one supposed to be closed off somehow? The public one. I think it's supposed to be right here. Okay. Okay, so I'm going to copy everything now. I don't need the comments. Control C. And then we'll go ahead and go to our Leetcode page. And then just paste. Actually, I think we can put public in the same area. Just I don't want to delete those, so just my OCD needs to do this. And the private isn't the right one. Put everything in its right and proper place. And then everything should be in beautiful order now. Delete that to make it pretty. Let's try to run it and see. Wait a minute. Wait just a minute here. This is supposed to go. Let's just run it and see what happens. Yeah, I thought so. Line 20 expected at the end of the declaration. Show me the code. Line 20. This one? Boom. I totally forgot. Actually, don't we need it for all of them? Okay, and then let's try to run it again. Ah, there it goes. So now everything worked. Jar A, if it had lead and code, 0. Jar A had this, jar B had this. The output of jar A would be AB. Boom. Done. That's pretty fun. And the similarities are very interesting. Whereas Python, we're using a module, and for C++, we actually have to create the mathematical process itself. But overall, very fun to learn both at the same time, and I'll just keep doing it. Thanks for joining.